Pokemon Scarlet review. All right, here we go. You know what? I'm gonna start off with the things I like about it because I have a lot of bad to say. All right, so what I do like about it is, as a whole, it's pretty. I didn't quite remember until I saw a contrast just how much better the graphics were already compared to Sword and Shield from 3 years ago. Until I saw them, and also when I was playing it, I was more recently reminded of the Legends Arceus graphics, which is much more what it's like. Um, so I think it's a beautiful region. Not a huge fan of the regions that tend to get very focused on snow and things like that. I do prefer the more tropical ones. There isn't really anything tropical here per se, and there are gigantic mountains, but I think of it more overall as a very greenish environment. As far as the Pokemon go, I think it's very creative how, with the Phantom Pokemon, you have the ones that are. So I got Scarlet, so the ones that are from the past, the ones that are from the future. To name just a few Pokemon that have a past or a future counterpart, Delibird does for a future one. Donphan has one for both. Um, Misdreavus has a past, form. And it's interesting too because they're not considered time regional difference. They're not considered that. It's kind of like how Berserker is its own Pokemon. It's not Persian, right? But Galarian Meowth is the third form of Meowth, but it's not its own thing. These are considered their own different Pokemon, which is interesting. I really like the ancient form aesthetic wise of the Magnemite line, and I'm not even a huge fan of those Pokemon. All right, so moving forward, I like the idea of the school. Since Alola, they've been trying very hard to do things differently. Instead of gyms, you basically have the gym equivalences in Alola. And, with Galar, yes, again, you start with a professor, but they have that base. You have the overworld and then you have the towns, and you have that as kind of a starting point. In this game, you do start at home, but it's a very small, small, small town. There's not much to say about it. And immediately before the gyms are even introduced as an idea, that's the first thing you're going to think about, right? After you get your Pokemon, you find out there's a school and you go to the school. I do recommend, as far as enjoying the story, because I always enjoy the story aspect of games, go to all the classes, talk to all the NPCs. Classes are actually pretty fun. Basically, when you do classes, it unlocks things for you. I thought that was original. I thought it was interesting. It's a very nice looking, academy too, if I do say so myself. And then after that, again, they did something new, and I think it was a good idea. The way they advertise it is you can choose how do you want to play the game. You can get badges. You can take down the Titan Pokemon. You can also take out the bases for the regional villains, Team Star, and I think that's cool. Um, let's see. Honestly, there are other good things I have to say, but in a nutshell, I like the way they set it up. I like the new Pokemon. There's a lot more good ones, in my opinion, than ones. And it's nice looking. I guess now let's go to the bad. Here's what I'll say. Although I have more bad things to say than the good, it's kind of like putting them on a scale, and they don't necessarily outweigh the good. And even if they do, I can't go as far as say these are bad games, but we will get to that final thought there. All right, so let's go. Let's move on with this. With the games as they are, here's the bad. All right, the first thing is let's talk about, everyone's talking about the glitches. Long story short, if you haven't played them, how could you have not heard about this if you like Pokemon? This is the glitchiest Pokemon game that's ever. I've never really played a Pokemon game and thought of a glitch. I know there's the Project. I'm sorry, just made Project Mew one. I know that there's the missing number, and supposedly there was a rumor about the Mew glitch back in the day. I never encountered those, so it didn't really affect my opinion. And yeah, a game in 2023, and let's round it up, right? Has no business having noticeable glitches. One of the things you'll notice is when some characters walk from a distance or you see a windmill, it looks choppy and they look kind of slow. That's not okay. I'm surprised Nintendo put their quality seal on it, which I'll get to in a second. So initially, people blamed Game Freak. Well, it turns out a week later, it came out. Game Freak didn't want to release these games yet. They were waiting for Christmas 2023, so a year from now. And yeah, 1 year would have been enough to fix these glitches. I'd say even a few months would have been. But Nintendo was selfish. They like to beat money out of Pokemon. Every year there has to be something now, right? A main game, a side game like Legends Arceus, a remake, maybe even some expansion packs thrown in. Every year there has to be something. And they were pressuring Game Freak and saying, we want this out now because Breath of the Wild 2 isn't ready to come out. So we're pushing it back to May, but we want something for the holiday season. So you guys got to get on this. And they pointed out to them, look, we don't have time. We can't do this. It's not humanly possible. And they were told, you'll do it. To which they said, we're not saying we won't. We're saying we can't. And Nintendo was just like, look, these games are coming out on, this date. Deal with it. So they had to. I think after honestly being treated like this, I'm surprised a lot of people have been saying this more openly because I think they would jump at the opportunity and pay tons of money for it. I think it's time Game Freak divorce Nintendo and go with a company that'll respect them. So maybe Sony, maybe Microsoft. I think it's high time, honestly. With that said, and let's not kid ourselves, Sony and Microsoft are powerful companies. No matter how much money it would cost to have this divorce, they would more than enough to be able to make up for that. So, with that said, the graphics are annoying. They don't bug me though. Um, the idea that they are there is annoying, but for most people, if this is like a real big thing or deal breaker and they're asking for refunds, I never encountered a part of the game that was not playable because of a glitch. And it wasn't often or big enough to actually really get to me. It's the principle that I gotta point out, hey, this is messed up, even if it's not really Game Freak's fault. Um, it does lead to conversations. A friend of mine, an old friend of mine, has pointed out that Pokemon in general doesn't have the best graphics. Like, would you compare these games to a new game on the PlayStation, like Last of Us 2, which is not the same audience, or something like that? No. But Game Freak is, even after the money they got from Nintendo, they have a lot of the same staff from years ago, so they still have the same startup group. And it's easy to say, well, just get new people, but how are you going to bring the news to people who are going to be losing their income now? I think it's messy. I think the money is there though. Um, they should just hire more people and have the people who aren't so good at, um, making these games. If they're close to the age, a generous, you're not going to fall through the cracks, retirement package with a pension. If they're willing and able, have them relearn graphic skills. I think things can be done about this, or put them on a side game that no one cares as much about. We'll see what happens in the future. Let's get to the other things though, because for most people it's the graphics. So, what is it about these games that I'm not the biggest fan of? I think when Mega Evolution came out, it was a cool idea. I think Z moves were a step down because they didn't want to replicate things and they didn't know what to do. I thought Gigantamax in theory could have been cool, but let's be honest, it looks very, very choppy and silly and slow. As much as I did enjoy Ash vs. Leon, let's not kid ourselves. Even then, it looked better, but still looked weird. Um, so I don't think that was successful either. I think this is the best thing they've had since Mega Evolution. But at the end of the day, the Pokemon look crystallized. I mean, that's pretty. It's just not that impressive to me. Um, they advertise it as you can make your own journey. Let's be real here. The story, if you're literally just running around the world map, there are things that are going to happen in the story, and there are things that make the storyline more interesting if you do all three quests. So, I mean, you could advertise it as go to any gym you want first, right? Okay, but here's the thing about the game. My biggest complaint about these games is this is the first Pokemon game I ever had to play that I had to stop twice, basically to level up my team. With every Pokemon game before, and this is a series that has Nuzlocking because people think the games are too easy. This isn't like Final Fantasy or another kind of RPG where you have to do that a lot. With Pokemon games, I always pick a starter and I grow a team, and with that team, I use the same team to get through the storyline, and then from there, I focus on other things. So, with that said, I mean, that's what it is. With this though, there were several times I definitely don't feel like I was actually following the guide about what to do in what order if you want the game to have your level always reflect where you are in the game. And again, I had to power grind, and honestly, I thought it was annoying. I felt like it was a waste of my time. I did find that if I went to regions where my Pokemon were a little bit underwhelmed, they could catch up and get a lot of experience there. Fine, whatever. It wasn't welcome though for me. Um, with that said, though, like I said, this might I'm trying to keep this organized. It might go a little bit all over the place. Um, there is something really good I wanted to point out. So one of the storylines is you help this guy named Arvin, and he's got that new dog Pokemon based off of Mastiffs, and it's very sick. Every time you beat a Titan Pokemon, um, so think of like Legends Arceus, those things. This they brought those back. Not really a huge fan of the idea to be honest, but his dog would get slightly more better from herbs you collect. I thought it was a very touching storyline. I thought it was the best storyline in the whole story. I'd say second place is it was kind of like Alola Redux with what's her name, Lucamine and her kids, but again, we have someone who is being neglected by their parent because of their work and they're upset. Then there's a Ray Prochmont. By the way, spoilers are in this, so turn it off if you don't want to hear them. But we find out that in my version, she was able to make a time machine to go in the past. I'm sure in Scarlet, the dude professor does that with the future. And you have to take care of that. And she died. And you actually have to fight a robot that has her memories in it. I thought that was good. As far as these fraught child parent dynamics they have in this franchise, I think that was the best one. And I guess going to another positive thing, I thought Team Star's backstory was touching. It was touching. It was nice. These six really love each other. Oh yeah, the big reveal. The one who's helping you take them down is someone who becomes a buddy of yours who is the mysterious leader of this group. Um, it's kind of convoluted, but honestly, look, I'm not a little child. I saw it coming miles away before they revealed it. But I think their story is nice, and it's interesting because when you go into the school, everyone is super nice. And yeah, a small cynical part of me was like, not all kids are this nice. You're lucky if half of them, not half, but you're lucky if majority of them treat you this way. And for the first time, because the protagonists' rivals have been very friendly since Silver from Pokemon Gold Silver, the rivals are really nice, and it's a problem. IRL, that's nice, but for telling a good story, people have really it really started to get to people with Hal and then Leon's brother. But I'm like, yeah, but it's been this way since Hoenn. All of your rivals are really nice people. So they did bring up, hey, well, in the Pokemon world there is bullying, which leads to the formation of this outcast group. I thought they were all interesting too, how each one had a unique reason why they were picked on. They weren't always necessarily shy or necessarily a bookworm. Always something. These are real issues that kids get bullied over. I did think one of the Pokemon I wasn't a huge fan of was I wasn't a fan of the idea of a car engine and its evolution, and they use that in battle. It just looks ridiculous. And again, I was doing things in the order, not skipping any trainer battlers or wild Pokemon, in the order that game guides are recommended. And this is the first time my team got completely KO'd. Technically, they one of the guides had me battle the red-haired girl when I was apparently according to another one. The only real mishap was I was supposed to battle somebody else first. Whatever. Second time I ended up winning just due to crazy defense. Um, but that brings me to another thing that I don't like about this particular group. So with this group, I'm not a huge fan of the idea that with Team Star, that's their thing. We're upset that we were bullied, so now we've scared off the bullies. They'll never pick on us again. Listen, this is the franchise that their baseline was a criminal. Basically, think of Pokemon Mafia, a criminal organization that stole Pokemon because the leader wanted to make an army of Pokemon to take over the world. I'm not really sure how that works because Pokemon obey the people who catch them, but that's just the story. Very basic, but these were 8-bit basic games for kids. They came out in 95. But it was better than this, at least as far as intentions and showing a threat. And the big reveal is, the corruption is so high that this guy's leader of the Viridian Gym and nobody knows about it. Hoenn, I think they meant well for a good story. It was kind of dumb how it played out. Team Magma, Team Aqua. One wants to make more water, one wants to make more land. Oh no, there are consequences for that. And then epic battle. Like, really, these adults couldn't figure this out. But I did like how it was a step up as far as epicness. Then you get to Team Galactic, create a new universe, and that just goes horribly wrong for the leader, Cyrus. And I'd argue that was their best team because they were such a threat. Um, by the time you get to Unova, um, the issue there was that regional group. They wanted to have everyone release their Pokemon, and then after they'd done that, they were going to use those Pokemon. So everyone else would be unarmed, and then they would use their Pokemon to take over the world. Again, it's Pokemon. It's not usually the most thought out stuff. Um, but the thing about that is, it brought up something. The group Team Plasma, by the way, is what they're called. It brought up the fact that made people uncomfortable that, hey, this is a thing. You could look at the Pokemon franchise and say that, yeah, catching Pokemon is cruel. And the way the game resolves is no, the Pokemon like being your companions and they don't mind battling, whatever. Um, so, okay, that's fine. So what about the next group? Well, for the next group, Team Flare, it's like the fourth group all over again. This guy wants to be genocidal, though, uh, the leader of the group, and he's just kind of like, yeah, I don't like things that aren't pretty, so I want to get rid of that. Let's do this, guys. I know it's silly. Um, and then last but not least, you had the last two groups, which were the ones that where it really started to get bad. Team Skull are a bunch of hoodlums. End of story. It turns out being Lucian's organization that's the bigger threat. And then for Gen 8, you have Team Yell, obnoxious soccer hooligans who are cheering on their friend just a little too loud. So again, the big group is the metaphor for climate change, which is everything with Eternatus, and Chairman Rose's stuff gone horribly wrong. Looking at those games if you're curious. So this time, this group of people that are like, oh, we were bullied. They're not even hoodlums. They're not even particularly obnoxious in general. They're just targeting a certain group of people. They're not trying to cause disruption in general. They, they're the big ones. They're the big bads. So, two things about that. I think they're less annoying than Team Yell, and I like them as far as they're a group of friends who seem, I don't know, it seems more authentic than Team Skull being, well, we have all one thing in common. We're outcasts, as opposed to we are friends who knew each other and we know each other because we're a smaller group on an individual level. I'm not saying they're the worst team. What I am saying is they're the least threatening. So I thought, okay, well, what's the big bad going to be? Well, you get to the crater in the middle of Paldea, and there's this vague thing about the phantom Pokemon are going to come out, and you have to stop this. Well, you never stop this from happening. You can revisit the crater, and the phantom Pokemon are always there. And they're acting like they're going to be set loose across the world and cause chaos. And I did see one person who was playing run into the Phantom past version of Donphan, but you don't see them all over the place. And unless you go and bug them to catch them, they're not really an issue. So there is no big we need to save the world plot in place of a lesser team, which I think is the problem here. So finally, going on to the next thing. I already saw it with Legends Arceus, the big, strong Titan Pokemon. It's nothing new anymore. And one of the strong suits of the game is I really liked the gym leaders, to be honest. You know, uh, I thought they were some of the best gym leaders we've had in a long time. And it might be numerically the amount of gym leaders I like the most from any region, to be honest, pardon me. So going, right down the line, um, with the Paldean gym leaders, you've got Katie, who's the one I was the most unimpressed with, but I think they imply she was a gardener or something. It might be something else. So she bakes. She bakes a lot. And, she trains bug Pokemon. So the baby gym, if you will. But here's the thing. The first gym leaders tend to be ones that I find to be the weaker ones anyway, personality-wise. Usually the kinder, gentler people. I mean, I think Brock was honestly the exception. Next one is Bracius, and I think it was something to do with poetry with him, and he trains grass Pokemon, a little tougher. I thought they did a good job with his dialogue, showing what he's passionate about instead of just saying what he's good at. Lavencia, who trains electric, is the next. She is the first YouTuber in the Pokemon world, basically. Kind of eccentric, but I think it really worked as far as making memorable characters. The next guy, Cascarefa, who teaches water badges. When you go to his gym, he's actually out. He goes to a whole different town to do something with trading, and you have to learn how to go to the auction and work with him. I liked how he was very over the top. Like, I think if he had been in an anime, it would be great. Next one is Larry, who I actually like a decent amount, which is interesting because he's supposed to be, like he says, I train normal Pokemon. I'm so normal. He is the boring, what they call salaryman Japan, but the boring 9 to 5 person that a lot of people become in middle age in life. You're just worn down by years of no fun, all work, and that's who he is. I think it's interesting though because they bring it to a level where it's very noticeably like almost a comic effect, trollish and cynical. Also, he's the first gym leader to also be an Elite Four member. That's interesting. Montenerva, Ghost Badge, she's the first MC rapper Pokemon trainer. What else is there to say about that? You also have Alfrenada, who, you know what? Sorry, I've been reading the names of the towns. That's why it sounds so weird. All right, so the book person is Katie. Bracius is the grass guy. Iona is the electric. Kofu is the water. Larry is normal. Yep, very normal name. Rhyme, because rhyming. Now you have Tulip. So with Tulip, uh, she's interesting. So she is the psychic fashion Pokemon trainer. I feel like we've already had her before. Like you had, what's her face, the electric gym leader in Unova. I think she was done a little more well. She doesn't come across. She is stuck up, but I think comes across as more of elegant stuck up instead of a very diva in your face stuck up way. Speaking of stuck up, Grusha, the final gym leader. So they are actually ice type. They are a snowboarder, and they're very in your face about how you're inconveniencing them, and being a gym leader is inconvenience because they can't completely focus on snowboarding all the time. I thought the brashness snow really made them stand out. So what I'll say for now is, at the moment, I'm feeling like they're the best gym leaders we've had, at least as a whole. And I could be wrong about that, but one thing I will say is they stand out. Like if I were to tell you 5 years from now what stood out about these games, probably that. I'll really quickly throw in the Elite Four. Rika isn't actually anything to write home about. The poppy little girl is just weird. She's a little girl. Where's the time of the day for someone that young to have gotten that strong? Got Larry again, and then you have Hassel, who is also a teacher at your school. I like how these games double dip. And then you've got Gita. So I've already seen some videos talking about how she's the weakest champion as far as character personality goes, and I've got to say yes. And here's why: she's nice. Okay, what else? I don't know what else. She's nice, and she is Jim. I'm sorry, she's the champion. Okay. Well, you fill the post of champion. Going on with Kanto and Johto in the games. Um, Also throw in the anime. So with the anime, it's Lance, and he's also Pokemon G-Man. He goes on these crazy adventures where he takes down criminal organizations and calms down and catches, like the Red Gyarados. He's able to calm down Kyogre and Groudon. With Hoenn, it kind of splits, but you have Steven Stone, who's the son of an executive, and he also is an archaeologist. Um, you have Wallace, who's in the anime the champion of Pokemon contests, and he's one of, at the time during Sinnoh, one of the three known champions of the world. So that's very impressive, and he has a personality that goes with it. Um, so what else? Moving on to Cynthia, everyone's favorite. She's also into specifically Pokemon mythology, which was great. I'm a huge mythologist in real life. One of my majors was religious studies, and she also is an archaeologist herself. She loves ice cream. She's very sweet. Um, her design is cool, the Umbreon ears and everything. Going on to Nova, Iris. Well, especially if you watch the anime, you know a lot about her. But she is someone who aspires to be this dragon trainer. She's like a George of the Jungle, Tarzan kind of wild child, and she actually gets to that goal. There's more to say with her being a main character in this series, but we're getting to. I don't want to get too off topic here. A lot of people thought that Diantha was a weaker champion as far as character personality goes. Sure, but what can you say about her? She's a fashion model. Okay, and that works with France. Going on to Alola. Well, in the anime, that's Ash. But, in the games, well, before that, I guess you could say honorarily, it's kind of Professor Kukui, who is a professor, but he's also a wrestler for fun. And let's see, I just wanted to Google something real quick. And then, of course, with games and anime, you have Leon, who is the first person ever to be shown as a champion who advertises it. He's also meant to be like the soccer master, the way he poses and all that stuff for the cameras. So we get to this, and what do we say? What do we say about her personality, or what she is a metaphor for? What are her hobbies? She's the champion. Now, that in itself is kind of weak, but here's the other thing. It's very common to have champions in these games. So in this game, Your friendly rival is a girl you meet from school who's also another champion. And they talk about champions like they get a champion like it seems like every year. It's very common. And you don't even have a champion dethrone another champion. I guess pretty often they leave four get defeated, and you have all these champions wandering around. And if you're lucky, you might battle one at the school championship. That really devalues the whole system they've been having since the first games. That's the complaint I'm getting out there. So there you go. Um, and I guess I've talked about the villain group, the rivals, and honestly, I feel like I've said everything I have to say about the games. I did complete all three of the quests because that does make for a more comprehensive, enjoyable story. I actually completed the Pokédex for the first time since the days of all the games all the way up through Game Boy Advanced, where you could easily use Game Shark. I always just kind of felt, the reason I don't battle competitively, which I'll get to in a minute. For me, it would be a time waster. But you know what? I was enjoying the games. I don't think they're bad. And it got to the point where I'd already gotten like over 200 Pokemon. And since the days of Legends Arceus, you can so much more easily trade. And I do like the process of going on Discord, having small talk with people, and getting the trades in. The process of trading is fun, not so much filling up the Pokédex. But I got so much help with filling out the decks with trading that when I did have to hunt down a few more Pokemon after I beat the storyline, it wasn't so boring. So yeah, I did complete the Pokedex. You do get this certificate, which isn't much to write home about, but what happens is as you complete the Pokedex, you get cool little prizes. So is it worth filling out the Pokedex this time around? It can't hurt. Um, Last but not least, finally, my overall thoughts compared to the other games. To be honest with you, and I've had some time to think about it, I don't really know what I want to give this for a number rating. Maybe somewhere in the middle. I kind of want to feel like it's a 5, but maybe give it a 5.5 because I feel bad because one of the reasons it's down to a 5 is the graphics, which wasn't even Game Freak's fault. Maybe the bigger pictures in general, though, they do need better graphics. So I can't give them that whole point out of pity because Nintendo was bossy. But it's the combination of, for me, the power scaling was a big thing, honestly. Um, a weak story. I feel like so many things were on autopilot. Let's do Titan Pokemon again. What's the new gimmick we have to do? I don't know. Something closer to Mega Evolution that was most popular. How about Terra Pokemon? Okay. I guess leads to the big last thing. I know this is strange. I'm probably the only person that feels this way. I don't like the big map overworld of Pokemon. What they started with the overworld in Sword and Shield, continued more with Legends Arceus, and now, they got the idea from Breath of the Wild, and I'm just not a fan of it. I'm really not. Um, they don't have to be like the way they were up through, you know, Sun and Moon, but some kind of in between. You know, I do play other video games besides the Pokemon franchise, but it's far in between. It's way too saturated on YouTube. Unless I already become some hardcore full time gamer who plays everything out there and gives my interviews, you're not going to see that content that often. So I really want to talk about it. So with Pokemon, though, I'm very used to a series that is pretty simple and straightforward. It's the same way I feel about the Zelda games before Breath of the Wild. Do they have to look like they did back in Link to the Past? No, I'm not against 3D in general, but with um, what I'm getting is, with Breath of the Wild, which the map was too big, in my opinion, just way too big, you get lost and get nothing done for like 10 hours. There's your day. You're never getting it back. Same with this game. Not as much. It's not nearly as big. And it's not so easy to get lost because they do have a map that shows locations you can go to. My point is, I do think it's just too big, and for pure completionists, that's going to take up a lot of your time. I think it could be something that's a little less involved next time if they want to fix that. Cut it down a little bit. Now, with that said, we do have the other issue here of with the idea of I was thinking, yeah, and I just really thought about. I was kind of just thinking about how the standard is Breath of the Wild. I think is when things got out of control with how big the games are. But I was thinking even a few days ago, for me, like I'm old enough to remember when the N64 came out, and it was groundbreaking. Having Mario run around the map, even goofing off for an hour and doing nothing, but having him jump off the cliff or drown, um, which was fun. Um, that freedom was great. Ocarina of Time, one of my favorite games of all time. I loved how big it was, but it wasn't too big. And even for Pokemon, maybe that's too big of an open world concept. I don't know. But that does unfortunately bring it down. Now, I don't think that in itself is enough to take away a whole point. But because, again, Nintendo's fault, so this is like a half takeaway point, which makes one negative takeaway point. I don't like how when you go into the towns, one of my favorite things with RPGs is talking to the NPC characters and checking out all the little stores. Even if it's a game like Pokemon, they don't have the most interesting things to say. I think it's interesting enough because when I play video games, I want to have fun, I want to relax, get immersed in a world. Not all the NPCs in this talk. Some of them get a word bubble that you can just breeze by. I can read very fast, so it's like literally breeze by. Saw three word bubbles, and some of them you can stop and talk to, but it's usually not very interesting. That's the problem right there. Now, finally, not only do you have these characters who don't have anything necessarily fun to say, but a lot of stores you can't go into, and when you do go into them, you don't get a room with people or someone who's selling you a product. You just get a generic menu, and it just feels so pushed. And that gets to my final thing, which, if I wanted to be nice and bump it up a little bit, I have to keep it at a 5.5. Don't want to take any more off, but I don't like the whole idea of the picnic. When I was talking to my sister about this, she said she doesn't like how at the picnic your Pokemon you just kind of float there instead of showing you eating. I could see that's because it was rushed, but I don't like. I've already given points off for that. What I don't like is this. I didn't like it with Breath of the Wild. I like the old-fashioned way of Zelda. Get the heart pieces, get some potions, get some fairies, blah blah blah. I hate the idea of stopping the whole game to collect ingredients for several hours and making a soup, and that's how you recover. Are you kidding me? Um, that was one of my biggest beefs with that game. And they brought it to Pokemon now. They didn't get rid of items. They still have the stores, which is great. But I just don't like the idea that Nintendo is pushing this idea, Game Freak, but you can see the Nintendo influence on it. Of, yeah, collect a bunch of stuff and experiment, and you'll get some stuff. And I know some games, some people enjoy it. Some people are playing this game, they're loving the idea of making these sandwiches. But for me, it's a boring thing that's a time waster. 5.5. Last thing. Um, I feel like there could have been more to do with the post game. Not taking any points off for this, but once you do all three quests, especially if you complete the Pokedex and you get that small dialogue there, there's nothing left to do in the games, really. You can do a little tournament in your school, but there's not some big quest to catch other legendary Pokemon, or like you had with Looker, the post game stuff that was going on from Unova through Alola. Nothing really. And again, it's probably because they were rushed. But one thing you could do is spend the next 3 years competitively playing. But I don't know how much I brought up, but I have chronic health issues which take up a disgustingly large part of my time. And for 2023, as far as prioritizing things goes, one is weight loss, which you can see is an issue. It crept up on me in the last 3 years. After that, honestly, the big thing is getting a book about a memoir about those health issues out there before taking the next steps to move on with my career, which just, if you want to know, is in education, but that's been put on hold due to these things. So the free time I have, I like to put towards, my social life, and then it's entertainment. And there are books, 3 books I have out there overdue. The reason I'm going on with all this, and you'll get to it, you'll understand in a second. Shows I care about, I don't watch too much, but the stuff I do care about, I tend to stick to the end, so it's snowballed over the years. And after that, it would be something like a video game. And I'm just not interested enough in battling that I would want to put that much time. And it feels like an all or nothing. I wouldn't want to just go to a local neighborhood thing or even a statewide thing. I'd want to make it up there to like the national level. and just natural talent and time, that's the key thing, and interest isn't there for me. I can't do that. So for someone like me who doesn't want to just battle or has traded enough to complete the decks, I feel like it's just not enough as far as the post game goes. Anyway, be interested to see what everyone else has to think. Have a good one.